we're going to combine now a little bit of political talk with football talk as well. And I just thought it might be worth an interesting brief chat about the backdrop in which we think black players for England and other nations could be going into. We know that so many of Europe's leading nations are moving to the far right. We see nations like Hungary, Italy, Holland and Austria led by far-right leaders. France, by the end of this Euros, could and probably will have a far-right leader in charge of their nation. And we've seen a German publication put out a poll in recent weeks asking if they think the German national team should have more white players in it. And I'll come to you first, Troy. And do you think that that is going to be relevant, a problem? How do you foresee the backdrop of what's politically happening in Europe affecting the Euros and the black players that are going to feature at the Euros?
I don't.
You don't think it'll matter?
I don't. Not this time around. I get the conversation. Look, the past major tournaments, we built ourselves up in Russia. Do you know what I mean? For something to happen out there, the World Cup that's just gone, we've built ourselves up. One thing that normally happens is that these tournaments carry off without any issues whatsoever. The issues generally are when nations are knocked out and they feel the wrath back at home. As we've seen that with the England squad, we've seen it with other nations as well. You know, it's very difficult to travel back home if you don't win. And their expectation for most of these nations, that they're there to win it. They're not there just to participate, obviously the bigger nations. But I don't foresee, look, and I could be totally off track here, by the way, but I don't foresee problems in this competition. Let me take it back to Russia 2018. They did a very good job with isolating the problems, the people who were there to cause trouble. Mm-hmm. You take the ringleader off of the streets, you then devalue the kind of pack behind them, and the tournament goes off without the issues that we were expecting. And we were expecting a lot of racism in Russia. The minute the tournament finished and the Russian league started, very first game, there were the racist incidents again. So I think that most of the tournaments have been very clean. What we don't hear is the behind-the-scenes stories, the kind of situations when fans are travelling around the streets and stuff like that. That may be an issue, but I don't foresee in-stadia stuff. But I do foresee, if teams are getting knocked out, who the targets will be for the hate and the discrimination.
Carl, do you think it's a little bit of a reach, the kind of premise of what I've put forward, or do you think that because we know UEFA and FIFA are so toothless when it comes to cracking down on racism within their competitions, if we're seeing the fans from these nations who are led by far-right leaders, you know, fans are citizens as well, they're going to be in the stadiums. Do you agree with Troy, though, that it won't actually be a problem at this competition? It may be later on where we see a bigger problem.
It's a really complicated question. I absolutely see where Troy's coming from. No, I absolutely see where Troy's coming from, which is basically when the eyes of the world are on you in international tournaments, nations tend to sanitize themselves, make sure they have a clean image. And Troy's absolutely correct. During the Russia World Cup, the more dangerous fringe elements associated with football were not there. The police were quite happy to see football fans drink alcohol openly, which is against the rules in Russia and whatnot. And during the tournament, and this is what you normally see, is during the tournament, sponsors and other stakeholders, shall we say, want to put a country in its best light. And that means money and sometimes very, very, very big raised eyebrows mean certain dangerous things go away or pushed on the ground. And everyone does it. I mean, you want to get really real, I'll tell you how London 2012 did it for the Olympics.
I've just seen a film about that. So yeah, we got lawyers. Yeah. We get the lawyers in.
They're not actually been employed yet. So let's just.
I mean, you called a lot of politicians far right, and I'm pretty sure all those politicians like to pretend that they're not far right. So
true.
They did.
Now, so there's that. So that in terms of, are you going to see the very visible, very, very obvious, overt, dangerous cases of racism in and around stadiums and being discussed? And I always want to say, I would hope not. And a lot of these politicians, if you get to that level where you might actually be in charge of a nation, you probably have a little bit of cunning, nous, however you call it, to not be nakedly bigoted on a world stage. And that's why that poll with the German football player about the makeup of the German national team was so odd. It was just so
blatant,
retro in its bigotry.
Yeah.
And what was quite pleasing was the fact that many members of the German national team outwardly said, "This is nonsense." Now, this is the German national team, which, let's be really real here, hasn't got the best record with racial sensitivity. But the fact that even the German national team, the fact they went, "No, this is nonsense. Get rid of it." So there's that. I don't think the politicians are going to outwardly say stupid things, and I would hope not. What you might get is the more insidious forms of racism. So the very subtle hand gestures that you might see from fans, or you're going to boo a certain football player, and they go, "Why are you booing that football player?" And you go, "Oh, it's not because of their skin color. It's because they went from this team to this team. That's why we're booing them." And that will probably happen more on the surface. And then you'll get what we're more used to, which is if your team gets knocked out, or if a black player misses a penalty, then we know what is more likely to happen. So I think that is more likely to happen. I'm talking to you right now. I am flying out to Frankfurt. I have had my security training before I fly out to Frankfurt. So things I've got to be aware of when I'm flying and when I'm covering certain games. And there are, 2 or 3 games in this European Championship which are just higher risk for me because I am black and because of what we know is going on in various nations. And I hope nothing goes wrong, and I know how to handle myself and whatnot. But that's just part of the territory there's just certain areas that are spicier for black people.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And we would all like to hope for.
Well, let's segue then into something that I think for some people would be seen as a positive step. And it was announced this week that the 3 football fans, 3 Valencia fans who racially abused Vinicius Jr., the Real Madrid superstar, they were sentenced to 8 months in prison for abusing him at a match. They were found guilty of a crime against moral integrity with aggravating circumstances of discrimination based on racist motives. Vinicius Jr. put out quite a powerful statement. Excuse me. I'll just read a little bit from it. I'm not a victim of racism. I'm a tormentor of racists. This first criminal conviction in the history of Spain is not for me. It's for all black people. And he went on to talk a little bit more about, or just giving his reaction, basically. We'll start with you, Carl. Do you think this is a significant moment for La Liga and for Spain, or as I fear, this has happened because the person at the center of it is a huge figure? Because it's Vinicius Jr., they've moved to do this. I'm less confident that this would have been the reaction and response had it been from a League Two in Spain player that received the same treatment.
¿Por qué no los dos? Right? ¿Por qué no los dos? Why not both? Right? Is this a huge momentous event in the history of Spanish football? Yes, absolutely. This is the first time football fans have been reprimanded, imprisoned for racially aggravated behavior in a football ground. That is huge. Has this happened because Vinicius Jr. is basically the face of La Liga? Yes. But it's still a good thing. And one thing that we have to, you get into the chewy nougat of things. The Premier League is very, very good at understanding overt forms of racism are bad. And it's taken a long time and the work of many, many good people, including Troy here. Thank you very much. But most Premier League watchers, Premier League football fans, people who go to Premier League grounds, and you can even put this, throughout the entire English pyramid, understand throwing a banana at a black player, bad. making monkey chants towards a black player, bad. Understand, they're good with the overt. I think that black player is a bad person because they're black is a bad thing to say, and you shouldn't say that publicly. The Premier League has problems with insidious forms of racism, so we've still got a way to go to get past the pace and power dynamic and whatnot. But in terms of overt, that is a bad thing to do, to discriminate that black player based on the color of their skin. Very, very good at that. Whereas in Spain, and this is something that has been quite puzzling for the non-La Liga watcher week in, week out. Spain, and particularly with Vini, they always frame the overt forms of racism directed towards Vinicius Jr. as not racist, but based on provocation. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we've constantly heard, well, Vini wouldn't get this sort of stuff if he stopped dancing. Vini wouldn't get this stuff if he didn't talk back. It's not racist, it's just responding. Whereas the Premier League's gone, you can call someone a tall C word, you can call someone a slow C word, but if you call someone a black C word, that's actually beyond the line. Whereas that line never really existed in Spanish football. This imprisonment, or this criminal case around Vini is Spanish football beginning to say there is a line here. And if the line is what Vini says, that will do for now. But the fact that Spanish football's gone, there is actually a line, is good for everyone.
Can I just come in there,
well
Carl?
done.
Can I just come in if you don't mind? There's a couple of things, and one of the things is I'm not very good at giving people a pass. And it's the one time I've disagreed with you today, and I think whenever we talk is the state of what happens in the Premier League. You know, for me, the Premier League fouled the last time there was a banana on the field of play. And I know it was 2018, and I get that people say things have moved on, but when that banana was thrown by that Tottenham fan and Aubameyang, and if we look at the news reports coming back from that period of time, the word racism was not in any of it. So I felt that we went backwards at that stage rather than go forward. Say it, call it for what it is, and identify and punish. And look, the individual was punished, but he wasn't punished for racism. He was punished for throwing a missile on the field of play at the Emirates. Now, for me, that's one of the biggest disgraces that I've ever seen, because we don't want to talk about it too much. Now, obviously, I'm privy to a lot of information that you guys wouldn't be, because I see the reports come in, etc. And up and down our leagues in England, we're not in a very good place. And anyone can question me on that. We're not in the best place. I agree with you about what's happening in Spain. It is a step in the right direction, but I'm not running around patting people on the back at the moment, because ultimately, how many times has Vinny Jr. been racially targeted in the last 2 seasons? You know, effigies from buildings is one thing, you know, not even being near a stadium and being racially abused is another thing, and no one damps down on those chants. But then 2 weeks previously, or 3 weeks, how long ago was it now? Time skips me. But after Nico Williams was racially abused, playing for Bilbao against Madrid, and there was a partial stadium punishment and a fine, and then trickling out into the news only a couple of weeks ago, Madrid have won their appeal. Atletico Madrid have won their appeal. So hold on, the partial stadium goes out the window. Even the €20,000 fine goes out the window. So for me, unless we have a consistent line, then I'm going to take the free going to jail, and they're only young and they'll learn lessons when they go in there, and I get that. And I see it as a landmark case, but I'm not jumping up and down until it's a consistent. And that is the kind of punishment that not just Spain, not just Italy, not just France, not England, we're all kind of meeting out, because the abuse is of a level that made the one of the world's greatest stars, you know, emotional, in tears, in a press conference at that stage of time.
I think what's also interesting for me is now that Mbappe's moving to Real Madrid, you've now got what we probably agree, the biggest star on the planet, football player in the world, moving to La Liga and to Real Madrid. And I just wonder, with the trio of Mbappe, Vinicius Juniors and Bellingham, who I don't know the guy, but I think he's very, very conscious and very, very aware of what he will and won't stand for and what he will speak up for. Now you've got those 3 black players at the biggest club on the planet. I'm really keen to see now what La Liga and UEFA do should this happen again.
It will happen again.
Of course, but my point is, I want to see what they do about it, because now you've got arguably the three biggest stars on the planet in your league. What's going to happen now? This happened when it's Vinny Jr. on its own. You can mess around. Now you've got the spotlight even more so on your club and on your league. What's going to happen? Just to link it to the Euros as well. I think in our WhatsApp group we were talking about, or somebody asked whether they think England will take the knee, and even what we think England will do if there is racism directed at any of their black players. Just briefly, because we kind of got to move on. Troy, what do you think should be the conversations that England are having, or the FA are having, in preparation for if the worst does happen?
Well, they're having those conversations. They've had those conversations. They have them ahead of each tournament now. And that's one good thing, is that they prep the players now, and they ask the players' opinions and they get feedback. One thing that they will not do, and it was a question that I was asked yesterday, is they will not walk off the field of play. And for me, that is one of the most ultimate things that a player or a manager, and I wouldn't put the onus on the players, can decide to do in the face of racism adversity. And I know people say, well, you let them win that way and this, that and the other.
Nonsense.
But why should you continue to go to work, be on the field of play, entertain and experience some of the crap that we know these players are experiencing? So, listen, I would hope that it was part of an option. It's not going to be. It's for the players to get your head down. We'll deal with everything behind the scenes.
So just so I'm clear, the official line is, if somebody's racially abused, as a collective, we are not walking off.
England will not walk off the field of play.
Do you think that in the moment, I mean, let me ask Carl, do you think in the moment they will adhere to that?
I mean, if the discussion's been had, then I would assume they would. Although it's the thing of, no plan survives engagement with the enemy. So I don't like having to invent such scenarios in my head to see how I would react to such a thing. The fact that we have to is quite depressing. I'm hoping that such things won't happen. I think if an incident like that does occur, the England team is more likely to stay on the field. I think especially after some of the things I was privy to in and around the Qatar World Cup, there definitely seems to be pressure now to make sure games occur when on the day games are finished and occur on the day they're scheduled for, rather than trying to reschedule things, because the schedule's so compact and whatnot. Trying to do perhaps the correct thing morally.
That's what I was going to say.
Number of invested stakeholders that go.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Trying to walk off the.
Sorry to cut across you, but the schedule is more important than the impact of racism. For me, that is wild.
It shouldn't. It never should be. However, as someone once expressed to me, good business decisions and good moral decisions aren't the most natural of bedfellows.
Apart, yeah.
Well, listen. Let's look. We've put a bit of a negative slant on the Euros. I think we're just these are convos I think we have to have and be prepared to have during the Euros, and we want to make sure that all the black players, of course, all the teams, don't have to deal with this,
and our journalists
as well, and all the black people that are going to be out in Germany. I'll be heading out there soon as well. Are protected. And I think it's important to have a conversation about what we think can and should be done in the event of the worst case happening. But to bring it to end on a positive for the Euros, look, hopefully there's a festival of football. We see some great goals, some great games. From an England perspective, they go as far as possible, and we just see some good football. I don't really care too much who it's from. Just give me some good football. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm really excited for this. It's that thing of, the more I think about it and the more I'm looking at the predictor and you're clicking who's going to finish top. Hang on, that quarterfinal could be quite fun. Hang on, that could be great. So that's great, and it's great that every now and again we do get these sort of summers where you can just all sit down and meet loads of people. And even just doing my research for the Euros, I'm learning loads about all these various European countries and their capital cities and their history and whatnot. And the reason why I find this job so entertaining and nourishing is because football, at its best, is an anthropological study.